New tonight at 10. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Nashay Taylor. An 18-year-old man died this morning after he was hit by an SUV in the city of McHenry. The North Dakota Highway Patrol says a street dance was taking place at that time, and just before 3 a.m. the man was walking on Jones Street near Honeck Street when he was struck. The man was taken to a hospital in Carrington to be treated for serious injuries, but he later died. The driver of the SUV has been identified as 41-year-old Shannon Brandt of McHenry. Brandt faces charges for DUI related to vehicular homicide and for leaving the scene of the crash. And a Reamer teen died this afternoon during a crash along Highway 200 in Cass County, Minnesota. Authorities say the car the teen was driving struck a road approach before going up in the air. The vehicle then landed on its side and rolled. The teen was not wearing his seatbelt, causing him to be ejected during the crash. Minnesota State Patrol says alcohol is also believed to be a factor. Jim is here now with a look at our forecast. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Nashay, right now we're looking at our home of economy Skycam up in Grand Forks, where the winds are calm and the skies are mostly clear. There's a couple of clouds hanging around still up there, but for the most part we have clear skies. Temperatures across the region are in the 50s for most everybody. We have some places out to the east that are in the 60s still, like Fergus Falls there at 61 degrees, Baudette at 60, and Alexandria at 63, our warm spot on this evening. Sky conditions are clear for most people again. Some of those clouds hanging around up north, but for the most part we have clear skies and maybe a sprinkle or two as those clouds move out of our region, but not much there to worry about, or even not much there to even get wet. As we move on into the overnight hours here in Fargo, we'll see those clouds start to build and we'll see temperatures dip into the mid to lower 50s. And while those clouds build, there is a chance for some rain tomorrow and some storms that could be severe even. And I'll let you know what those impacts will be coming up.
Okay, thank you so much, Jim. New tonight, a Fargo man was arrested yesterday evening after Fargo police say he tried to attack an officer with a shovel. 29-year-old Tyree Gardner was arrested for attempted aggravated assault on a peace officer, terrorizing, refusing to halt, and criminal mischief. Police were called to the Dead Rock Star tattoo shop in the 3400 block of Interstate Boulevard around 6 p.m. yesterday for a report of a man breaking windows with a shovel. When officers arrived, Gardner attempted to strike the officer with the shovel, causing the officer to use his taser. According to police records, Gardner is also a registered sex offender. Authorities are expected to release new information about the officer-involved shooting that took place in Mapleton last month. If you recall, police were called to the 500 block of 5th Street in Mapleton after there were reports of shots fired. The incident led to a standoff before officers shot 35-year-old Andrew Martinez. 4 officers have been identified for taking those shots during the incident. A joint press conference between the Cass County Sheriff's Office, Fargo PD, the NDBCI, and Attorney General Drew Wrigley is scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. A recently released 21-page inspection report from the Minnesota Department of Corrections revealed a long list of issues at the Clearwater County Jail in Bagley. Those issues include staffing shortages and maintenance concerns within the facility. The report, which was conducted last month, states that the facility is operating at low staffing levels. The jail can hold up to 38 inmates, but only has enough staff to handle 25. The report also states that staff have not been adequately identified and reporting maintenance issues. The inspector reported finding mold growing from a medical exam room table. The facility will now undergo yearly inspections. The Minnesota Supreme Court will hear arguments this Tuesday on whether to permanently allow cameras in the courtroom, following the trials of ex-police officers Derek Chauvin and Kim Potter that were watched by millions of people around the world. An advisory committee of Minnesota judges, attorneys, and court personnel is recommending the court continue its routine of keeping out cameras. Minnesota media outlets and advocacy groups say it's time for the state to embrace the technology like neighboring Iowa, Wisconsin, and North Dakota. Thousands of people walked from the Shields Arena in support of suicide prevention in the Fargo-Moorhead area. Valley News Team's Aaron Walling shares how many people are honoring the memories of those who have died from suicide and spreading awareness on the importance of mental health.
I never thought I would ever lose anyone that I loved to suicide.
More than 2,000 people from the Fargo-Moorhead area participated in this year's Out of the Darkness Walk as part of their healing process during Suicide Prevention Month.
It's very important to have this day to walk in union with others who have suffered the loss or suffer from mental illness, have made attempts, to know that there's this day and this walk to show them the love and support that we want to give them.
Martha Cassignon lost her 17-year-old daughter in 2007 to suicide and has been a part of this walk for over a decade.
It's important for the survivors to talk about the feelings that they're having, the loss that they feel, because it's a forever thing.
There are many resources available for those that are struggling with mental health, more so than there was years ago. From the National Suicide Hotline to local initiatives, the North Dakota chapter for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention says having these kinds of initiatives are critical.
The most important thing we can do is share in our stories and talk to each other about what we're going through so that we're not alone.
In Fargo, Aaron Walling, Valley News Live.
Facebook scams continue to be a problem for those selling and buying online. And for one Fargo woman, she had a scammer try to threaten her with a call to the FBI. The woman says she was trying to sell items online when she met the scammer. What started off as a basic conversation and the possibility of using the platform Zelle for the money exchange. But once she saw the email, she knew that she was dealing with a shady customer.
Well, they had sent me this email, and when I read the email, that was like the big one, because you can look at it and see that, I mean, it's obviously not from Zelle. There was all kinds of typos and stuff like that, so it was pretty easy to see that was fraudulent.
For more tips on how to deal with scammers, visit valleynewslive.com and click on this story. Some census takers who falsified information during the 2020 count weren't fired in a timely manner and in some cases even received bonuses. That's according to the U.S. Commerce Department's watchdog group. The findings raise concerns about possible damage to the quality of the once-a-decade head count that determines political power and federal funding. During the 2020 census, those reported cases had shown census takers were pressured by their supervisors to enter false information into a computer system about homes they had not visited so they could close cases during the last days of the census. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem is showing no sign of fighting action taken against her by a state ethics board over her actions surrounding her daughter's application for a real estate appraiser's license. 3 retired judges on the state's Government Accountability Board voted unanimously last month that there was enough evidence for them to believe the Republican governor had engaged in a conflict of interest. The board took unspecified, quote, action against the governor. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine continues to cause destruction across the war-torn country. This is new drone footage showing destroyed buildings in a town in eastern Ukraine. Russian shellings have hit other cities and towns across a wide stretch of the country, but today Ukrainian air defense forces carried out 20 strikes against Russia. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is urging lawmakers to add $12 billion in aid for Ukraine to the budget. Schumer says he wants to send Russia a message as world leaders prepare to gather for the upcoming United Nations General Assembly meeting.
The message to the Russians is we're going to fight hard for the additional $12 billion. It will make the Ukrainians, it will give them even more morale to go forward, and it will tell the Russians they're not going to win this war.
Schumer says the funding is expected to be voted on next week. North Dakota Army National Guard's 1st Battalion, 188th Air Defense Artillery Regime returned from a 14-month deployment to the nation's capital. North Dakota's delegation welcomed them home at a ceremony in Grand Forks. This is the battalion's 3rd deployment to Washington, D.C. The Bidens are among hundreds of world leaders and dignitaries expected to attend Queen Elizabeth II's funeral. That's later on Valley News Live at 10.
And check out these pictures of yesterday's storms that moved through. Jacob was able to take this one in between rounds of storms there. And an anvil cloud here outside of Moorhead by Christina. And lastly, a sunset on Big McDonald Lake. We do have another chance for some strong to severe storms coming up tomorrow, and I'll let you know what those impacts will be coming up.